Right, okay, let's kick this off then. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the Welsh Azure User Group Virtual Meetup. I'm going to knock this music off so we can obviously hear what I'm saying. Yes, so like I say, thanks everybody for joining. Welcome to the March virtual lightning talk session that we're going to be putting on. Like I say, this is the first for this user group now, where we're obviously going to try this out now. Hopefully it'll be quite, a little bit of a different dynamic, having a series of quick lightning talks. But yeah, let's kick on. So on that note, I want to introduce you to the team.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew and I'm a Cloud Solution Architect for Microsoft.
Hey everybody, my name is John Lunn, aka Johnny Chips, and I'm a technical architect and I work for BT Enterprise in the UK.
My name is Ahmed Lajam and I'm a Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft.
Hi, I'm Anna McNally. I'm a Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft.
Hi, my name is George Washira. I work for the Intellectual Property Office as a senior engineer for the Ed User Services.
I'm Richard Griffiths and I'm the Cloud Solutions Architect at Confused.com.
Hi, I'm Abul Kay. I work as a technical payment specialist for Clearbank.
So yeah, that was us. Thought we'd do a little bit of a video introduction so you can kind of get to know our faces. So yeah, hello from us all at the Welsh Azure User Group. All our details are on the screen there. So obviously feel free to reach out, say hello, make contact and spread the word, of course, of the Welsh Azure User Group. Most appreciated. Okay, so what have we got on tonight then? So like I said in the intro there quickly, we've got our first virtual lightning talk session. So we've got 7 great, fantastic community speakers joining us today to talk through things, that are related to Azure. So to kind of set the scene from a perspective of the agenda, we've got Martyn Coupland. He's going to jump on first session to talk to us about DevSecOps on Azure. We've got Mert. He's going to give us a session over Visual Studio Code and what that looks like to work with Azure with VS Code. Then about 7:15, we've got Chris Reddington. He's going to talk to us about how GitHub can help in planning, building and deploying your own personal podcast or blog site. Around about 7:30, we've got Darren Robinson coming on. He's going to talk to us about Azure Migrate and those migrations in the real world. Quarter to 8, so big thanks to Neil for jumping in. Unfortunately, Baz has gone ill, so best wishes to Baz, get well soon. But we've got Neil from Nerdio to jump on at sort of the last minute. So huge thanks to Neil for kind of filling that position for us. He's going to give us a session over building and managing your images using Nerdio, so that's going to be pretty cool. Around about 8 o'clock, then we've got Shabaz Darr. He's going to come on and give us a talk around backing up your Azure files using Veeam, which will be cool. And then last but by no means least, we've got Rolf McLaughlin coming on to talk to us around sort of licensing and subscriptions. So yeah, as per usual, we've got our Kahoot quiz. So if you've not got Kahoot installed on your mobile device or your desktop, get that sorted because you can join in and we've got some prizes for you to win. So house rules. You're all in charge of your own microphones, so be courteous to each other. There's no such thing as a silly question. If you've got a question, put it in the chat. I'm pretty sure, as the speakers are speaking, they might not get to see that, but we may have some time at the end of each session. If not, put it in the chat and we'll see how that goes. Obviously, if the speakers are able to stick around and answer any specific questions, that would be great. But if not, we'll try and get you some answers. Like I say, you're all in charge of your own mute button, so please, keep on mute if you can, unless you're invited to speak for whatever reason, and use that chat window. So the other thing, we always rely on your feedback. Obviously this is your user group. We arrange it to kind of put this great content back out into the community and obviously spread the word of Azure. So if there's anything you'd like to see, if you'd like to take part, you'd like to speak, drop us a line or fill in that feedback form at the end of the event, and that would be absolutely well appreciated. Like I say, if you've not got Kahoot installed, get on that because that'll be a bit of a fun quiz, bit of a tough quiz from what I can see as well, from what I've seen already. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, we're going to mix it up slightly differently this week. So we, as always, we tend to have two prizes. We have two £50 Amazon vouchers to give away. We're going to have one, obviously, for the first place winner of our quiz later. Now, whatever you're doing at the minute, if you can kind of help us spread the word of the Welsh Azure, what we want to see is your favourite home office companion. Take a quick picture, tweet us, tag us, spread the word, and what we'll do, we'll pick a winner at random, probably tomorrow. We'll just see who's got the funniest, the best looking picture on there. And you know, I mean the companion, not your facial features, obviously, in that sense. But yeah, get creative, get a bit fun, spread the word, help us spread the word. And on that note, a word from our sponsors. Mr. Norris, I believe you're going to talk to us about our first sponsor, Servant.
I am. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, so I'm Andrew Norris and work for Servant. I'm an Azure project manager for them. Servant are an all-up Azure partner. That's all we do is Azure. Our main bread and butter is on data center migration and hopefully exit for enterprise scale customers, and that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. Increasingly, though, we've become involved in WVD, and we've for a big higher education establishment in Scotland, we've just completed 72,000 seat migration for them. Stand up and access for 72,000 users. We have got quite a few other WVD projects on the go across Scotland and the UK, predominantly in education, but we're starting to see a bigger uptake on corporate and enterprise as well. And we spend a good deal of our time trying to help people find the right way to move away from their on-premise solutions. One of the big accelerators for that currently is VMware solution, AVS. So that's what we're spending a deal of our time over the last 6 weeks or so, and we're seeing quite a lot of traction in that area as people are seeing AVS as an accelerator into Azure. So thank you very much, John, for the chance to talk, and back to you.
No, thanks, Andrew. Superb. And yeah, thanks to you for pointing out that my mic's distorting a bit. Should be a bit better now. It's probably just my loud voice, but there we go. And the other thing to point out, obviously, Servant sponsor a few of the other UK-based Azure user groups. So go and check those guys out. You know, there's so many user groups around the UK with fantastic speakers, fantastic organisers. Obviously, you're on the Welsh Azure user group at the moment, but go and check out those other guys because they do equally as impressive talks. Okay, moving on to our second sponsor. You know, Admiral and Servant, they've both been with us from the beginning. Admiral, you know, a headquartered business based in South Wales. I'm guessing everybody knows who Admiral are, so obviously big shout out to them. We've not got anybody on the call tonight from Admiral, but there is a message. Admiral are hiring, aren't we all? I think it's fair to say at the minute cloud is going through the roof. So just a quick note on there. Admiral got a lot of exciting new cloud roles coming out at the moment. They're not all up on the Admiral Jobs website, but if you are interested, if you are looking and you can't find anything on that website, drop Luke Twos an email or hook up with him on LinkedIn and ask him for more information. But like I say, huge thanks to Admiral and Servant. We couldn't really put these events together really without you guys supporting us and sponsoring us with the prizes and things like that. So thank you to both of those guys. Okay, moving on, a couple of quick announcements. Anna can't join us tonight, but she asked me just to bring these up. So Anna McNally, our very own Anna McNally, part of the Welsh user group. She's involved in the Women in Tech within Microsoft, and they've got a couple of events coming up. So if you, obviously, if you've got young daughters of your own, or if you've got access to teachers and schools, help us spread the word. Basically, there's this Women in Tech event on the 27th of April. They're running 2 sessions, essentially. So this one is aimed at the ages 8 to 14, but it's really about, you know, I think what you can see there, they're basically encouraging the young kids into tech, into STEM sort of industry roles. So there's a series of short sort of sessions to bring the interest up of kids. So I think they've got a session kicking off for the 8 to 14-year-olds, and then they've got another one that I think is aimed, I think it follows on. So yeah, it's 11 o'clock onwards. They've got a 45-minute session afterwards for a slightly narrower age gap. I'm not too sure the reason behind that, but of course they're going to start looking at artificial intelligence and things like that. So if you're interested or know anybody that is interested in signing up to those events, if you just make a note of that mail, so it's askeduuk@microsoft.com, and drop them a line for more information, that would be cool. Okay, next up, just wanted, whilst we're all on the call and whilst we're all still filtering in, no time like the present to tell you about our next. I know we haven't even got over this one yet, but let's tell you about the next event, because you can all bookmark it right now, put it in your diaries. We've got, what we're going to try and do moving forward is we're going to try and keep that element of lightning talk session. So we're going to have 2 or 3 speakers doing a kind of 15-minute presentation. And then we're going to have what we're calling a feature length talk. So it'll be a 45-minute hour talk. So hopefully you can read that. I might have made that a little bit small, so I'll look at that. I certainly can't read it, so I'm going to make it bigger. I know Nerban is on the call now, so he's going to come and talk about Kubernetes and how it's not that difficult, apparently. We got Martyn, who is coming to talk to us about how to create Visio diagrams for Azure. And we've got our very own Matt Fatunka, who made me change that picture earlier, by the way. So he's going to come and talk to us about Postman, the REST client for VS Code. And then our feature talk, if you've been following me on Twitter and my antics with IoT and stuff like that, having a really good relationship at the moment with Peter Gallagher and Liam Gulliver. They're going to come on in our April talk and give us a demonstration of IoT in Azure, a practical demonstration with a robot arm. I've seen part of this talk, and it is really, really interesting, really fascinating to watch. So bookmark those dates, 15th of April, that's our next event. And that's it. I'm not saying thank you for attending. That's the last slide. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire up with our first speaker tonight, which is Mr. Martyn Coupland. And he is going to talk to us about DevSecOps. So on that note, over to you, Martyn.
Yeah, cheers, John. Hopefully audio's coming through okay. No time like the present to try a brand new headset. So we'll see how this goes. So thanks to John, thanks to the rest of the team, obviously sponsors as well, and obviously everyone for attending. It's really good to virtually be with you all. So 15 minutes to talk about DevSecOps. Okay, so I'm not actually sure anyone has talked about DevSecOps in 15 minutes before. So let's see where we get with this. I want to talk about something specific, really, to be honest, in this rather than a broad subject. But quick intro first of all. So some of you might have heard me speak before at various user groups and conferences, but my name is Martyn. I've actually just changed roles. I am going to be, as of Monday, the head of DevOps at Transparency, who are another Microsoft partner based in the UK. My responsibility there is around their Azure services and products and cloud management platform, as well as really transforming and driving through what we do with DevOps. So it's a new exciting challenge for me. This is the shortest slide deck in the history of slide decks, so which everyone will be really glad to know about. So I want to talk about the Microsoft tooling end-to-end that enables DevSecOps on Azure in about 15 minutes. And why do I want to do this? So I want to do this because people, I find generally from who I talk to, they don't realize that you can do a pretty in-depth and a pretty comprehensive end-to-end solution in Azure DevOps and various other related tooling. So the example in this is going to be around containers, because it's the easiest one to follow through all the way in the time span that we've got. But I want to talk to you about all of these different components and what it can enable us to do. By talking to you about that, hopefully, if you don't know already, you can see what Azure can do when we use all of the ecosystem. And I'm sure people will know most of the tools that we talk about in this, but what you may not know is how you can link them all together. So first of all, I want to talk about GitHub. So Microsoft owned now, obviously, GitHub, and a lot of people are starting to store their code in GitHub and then link it into Azure DevOps rather than using Git repositories within Azure DevOps itself. So fundamentally, the features that enable us to have a good DevSecOps story when it comes to GitHub, if you think about what DevSecOps is, it's around the ability to shift left. Fundamentally, it's around the ability to move any security threats or vectors for attack as far left as possible and give as many people as possible the ability to be able to really go in and look at what those problems are and really treat them and deal with them and hopefully fix them before they get into production. So a shift left is really the key. But specifically in GitHub, there's a number of different pieces of functionality. Somebody's with a pro account, so it's not always free, unfortunately. But GitHub Advanced Security, a feature called CodeQL, and also a feature called Dependabot. They're able to go into your code, they're able to identify and remediate issues with dependencies. So if you think about every developer uses third-party libraries. You know, we all use NuGet libraries. We all use a number of different tools to enable us to not have to rewrite code. That is exactly what packages are there for. But with the higher number of packages that comes a higher security risk, especially in environments which are more sensitive to your regular workloads. So being able to manage those from a security perspective and remediate those by using the latest available updates to those packages is obviously really, really important. So using secret scanning in there as well, we can use tools automatically within GitHub that will go out and scan for credentials that are committed in source control. And obviously through different policies on the branches and through different review cycles that you would do then on top of there with human-based reviews, you can capture a lot of configuration issues where developers are maybe leaking credentials into your application code. And we can take appropriate action. And obviously the appropriate action is to move them into Key Vault where they can be referenced by the application. But a little bit more on Key Vault later. Next is around CI and CD, so continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment, or to the fact that people don't know that. So within Azure DevOps, there's this feature called Azure Pipelines. It gives us the ability to do our deployment and integration pipelines through one tool, which is really, really good. But what I really like about Azure DevOps specifically over other tools is that link back from all of your work items, all of your bugs, all of your commits into source code that give you a huge amount of traceability for what is built. You can look at a specific release, you can look at a specific build, you can look at every single commit that is in there. And by looking at those commits, you can obviously see which work items have been addressed and which bugs and which other artifacts are related, in this instance, in this example, to that container image. That's really, really important when you're trying to look back historically and see what has happened in the event of an incident. So if you imagine linking all of this release information and log information into something like Sentinel, which is actually not on this deck, as it wasn't around when I wrote it a while ago, that adds even more power now, quite honestly. But having all of those things filter into one place where you can then look historically at data and say, yes, I can see these commit IDs and these work item IDs were included within this container image when it was built. Next thing is around container image scanning. So Azure Security Center and some of the paid add-ons within there, whenever you upload an image into the Azure Container Registry, Azure Security Center will automatically go scan those images for vulnerabilities and report those vulnerabilities into Security Center. Again, they can be linked back into tools like Sentinel or other SIEM solutions to really provide a complete picture of what is happening. But that's a point in time where if you think about how your pipelines operate, you can have that scan run and collect feedback in your pipeline as to how that is operating and put a pause on that deployment process if it comes back with vulnerabilities. You can also deal with them in whatever way possible by logging them as bugs on the developer's backlog, or simply accepting the risk and moving forward. This isn't always about fixing everything that comes up. It's about how we mitigate risk, and that mitigation of risk in security, maybe fixing a bug, it may also be accepting a risk because that risk is a less than 1% chance of happening and the impact of that is very low. So it's not always worth the investment time to fix it. Moving on to AKS or Azure Kubernetes Service. So this is really just in for completeness. So being able to deploy and manage those clusters, those AKS clusters directly from the pipeline using infrastructure as code, and integrating tools like Azure Policy into there to ensure you have a level of compliance is obviously really, really important. So all of a sudden here, we've made a shift across from application code into infrastructure. So we've moved across from application to infrastructure, but we're still in the pipeline. So we can make sure the config of our system is as we expect using Azure Policy. And we can make sure that it is within compliance. We can even automatically fix anything that comes up with Azure Policy if it turns out that a setting is not configured to how we want it to be. The platform itself is also inherently secure as well. It's a great way to run Kubernetes. And it's obviously a managed service as well. So it's platform as a service. You don't manage the platform at all. It's a service that you interact with. So being able to do those little bits on top makes it a much easier management scenario than having to manage full clusters. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do within AKS itself that can link into this process, which enables better levels of security. So we talked about Key Vault a little bit earlier on. So for those that don't know, Key Vault's a place where we can store all of our keys, certificates, tokens, connection strings, and anything else that we deem a secret. So any kind of username, password, API credentials. It may even just be certain strings that are sensitive to the running of the application. And they are called at runtime, so it's much safer than including them directly in code, because obviously that code gets out, there are static credentials in there. Developers can reference those secrets by using special magic names, by including the libraries in their project and referencing the name of the key vault and referencing the name of the secret. And then when that secret is required at runtime, the application will make a call into Key Vault to be able to get the details it needs. You can actually take this another level down as well. And during the deployment process, I've actually worked on something for a customer before where they had a process that the secrets were requested via a self-service portal, and the secret itself was automatically generated and stored in Key Vault, and just the name of the secret was given back to the developer, so that only Key Vault knew what that secret was. The developer had the name, so they can call it, but no one ever knew what the secret actually was. And it was the whole lifecycle tool behind there to cycle those around and connect to the platform as a service, SQL it was in this instance, to recycle the password and the account that it was for. So again, it's kind of the ultimate level of Key Vault really, is no one ever actually knowing what the secret is. No one has to know what the secret is to put it into the system, because it's randomly generated and then it's put up into the environment there, into the vault. Next is around authentication. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to application security and security in general, identity is one of the most important things that people generally forget about, as opposed to it actually being the thing that we use for every secured application, right? We log into an application, we get rights to that application, that's all identity. Having Azure AD there, if it's a consumer-based application, there's obviously Azure AD B2C as well, to be able to secure your logins and secure your rights to those applications. You can use tools like multi-factor authentication. There's various different reporting features within Azure AD as well that make it a really great solution, so that you don't have to go off and write a security solution to be able to manage your application. Right? Whenever we talk about anything like security or cryptography in development, we always use libraries that are there. Right? If a developer ever comes to me and says that they've wrote their own encryption library, I will tell them to go get rid of it and use something that already exists, because that's the most secure method. Same with identity. You know, why go to the trouble of writing your own user management system that controls authentication and authorization when there's a perfectly good tool capable of doing the job in there already? Finally, but by certainly no means least, is Azure Monitor. So often the forgotten tool of Azure, I find, from people that I work with, certainly. But you can use Azure Monitor, obviously, to look at both the application and the infrastructure layer in near real time. we can have automatic approval quality gates on our releases that look at that telemetry. And if we're not happy with what we see in that telemetry, we can do rollback of our releases based on that monitoring data. Right? There's some really good examples out there in the Azure DevOps library already where this is done, but people don't know it's there. So go check out the templates and you will find examples of this at play where you can link into Azure Monitor and you can look at telemetry. And if that telemetry is not satisfactory, you can roll back your release. So there's loads of great ways for that to happen. So think of monitoring not just from an availability or a performance perspective, but think of it from a security perspective as well. So think about monitoring not just from that level, but think of it about hooking into your SIEM solution as well and getting telemetry and monitoring out of there. If something doesn't look right, why take the risk? Roll it back because you have the ability to do that automatically and take it from there, log it back to the developers and have the developers have a look at it. So, you know, end to end, there's obviously a lot more detail to it than that, but this is something that you can do with out-of-the-box tooling in Azure. Some of it is not free functionality, but it's not overly expensive. It's not going to cost you a fortune to run this kind of pipeline system here that I've gone through end to end. Why is this fundamentally so important? So 2 reasons. When we shift left in security and go to that DevSecOps model, we're increasing the number of people that have the ability to look at security events for us. So if you imagine, I like to call it the DevSecOps ratio. So for every 100 operations engineers, there may be 10 developers and 1 InfoSec guy. And that 1 InfoSec guy has a huge job looking at sometimes billions of events if the organization is big enough. So being able to have more people look at these things earlier in the process so that they don't leak into production is really, really important when it comes down to securing your applications and making sure that you have the ability to really secure applications that are well tested in line with your other DevOps processes, but also stand the test of time as well. Tie all of those processes in together. If you do identify a security vulnerability, it can be quickly worked on by the team, tested appropriately, and using your investments in CI and CD, it can be very quickly released into production, negating the issue that you have detected, and hopefully it is something that you mitigate from happening in the future. So with that, take the last 2 minutes to answer any questions. Kind of surprised that I did that in 13 minutes actually. But yeah, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask now? Or otherwise I can stay around for a little bit and answer some in the chat.
That was brilliant. Thanks, Martyn. I don't think we've got any questions in the chat. I think, yeah, Chris was pointing out some of the bits as you were talking away there. So thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, there are no questions. Then we shall move on. Many thanks, Martyn. If everyone wants to come off mute and give Martyn a round of applause, thanks so much for your time.
Everyone.
Thanks, Martyn. Okay.
My pleasure.
And we shall move on. We have got Mr. Mert up next, and he is going to give us a talk over Visual Studio Code for Azure. Hey, Mert, how you doing? He's on mute. See, I had to say it, didn't I? You're on mute, Mert.
Okay,
And
can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go, loud and clear.
Okay,
Apparently my mic's
I'm
bad.
fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Mert. You should
Okay.
be able to share your screen.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. And I didn't prepare any slides, and I'll make a couple of demos, and hopefully they will work. So on the left side, you can see Azure portal, and on the right side, you can see the Visual Studio Code. And when we are creating resources, we have a couple of ways to do it. First one is using Azure Portal. It's next and finish style. And other one is using Azure CLI. It is a bit more developer style, I think. And the other one is using infrastructure as code for using some SDKs and other third-party products. But today I am going to show you how we can manage our Azure resources with VS Code extensions. I have lots of Azure extensions here. I am not going to talk one by one, but I want to show you if you want to use these extensions. You can search like this, and if you want to use the official extensions, you can write Microsoft. And there are lots of Azure extensions. It looks like the Azure portal, but you don't need to install them one by one. There are some extension packs like Azure Serverless, and it has 5 extensions, and also some Azure tools for IoT extension pack in 2.1. And right, and this one is the biggest extension pack. It has 11 extensions, so you can start installing these extensions. Okay, and I want to start from scratch. Okay. Is the zoom levels okay for everyone? Can you see it?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I am going to create an directory. Okay, now I am going to create a web application with .NET New. Let me see. Okay. Now I'm going to open this application with Visual Studio Code with this instance. I think it's okay. Now this is my web application, and I want to Dockerize it, and I'm going to add a Docker file. It's an ASP.NET Core application. I'm going to use Linux and these default ports. I don't want to add any Docker compiler, say no. Okay, now I have a Docker file, and there's a Docker extension here. Okay. Now I want to show that I have no Docker desktop running right now. I'm going to right-click the Docker file, and there is an option build image in Azure. If I select build image, it is going to use Docker desktop or the Docker if you are building in on Linux. Now I'm going to select build image in Azure. Okay, and it's asking me my container name. I say version 1. I'm going to select my subscription. Okay, I have no container registry in Azure, and I'm going to create here CR. Okay. I'm going to select the basic secure, create a new resource group, and say this one. I'm going to select base drop. Now it's creating a container registry. Okay, our registry is okay, I think. Let's refresh. Okay. Now we created our register from VS Code. Okay. Now I am going to show you. Let me find it. Okay. I am finding how to put them in the code. Okay, that's okay. Now it is creating the container image. It will take a couple of time. Now it's putting the related layers. I think it is going to complete in a few seconds. Okay, it's building. Okay, now pushing to the repository. Okay. Okay, it is ready now. So we can deploy from here to Azure Web Service or container instance. Now I'm going to deploy to Azure Web Service. There is a warning here. It says it is container registry is not enabled because its default value is false. And now I'm going to change the settings from Azure CLI and AZ, ACR, date, name. Darr, and admin. If I remembered correctly. Okay. You need to refresh after you run this command. Okay. Okay. It's asking again a subscription to web app. Okay. I'm going to use this one and create the web service plan. This is asking for a tire. I'm going to select free one. Again, for the location West Europe. Now it's creating a web service and related resources. It will take some time, and I am going to show you another stuff while it's creating. Okay, this is the extensions I mentioned at the beginning. So now I'm going to do something different. For example, let's create a virtual machine from there. There are two options. First one is this create virtual machine, and the second one is the advanced one. The advanced is asking more questions than this one. By the way, our application is ready. I'm going to open. While it's opening, I'm going to create a virtual machine. Okay, ms2 Veeam. Asking for a passphrase. That's all. Now it's creating a Veeam. And let me show you the advanced one. Yeah, and it's asking for an operating system. Saming, say Windows. By the way, this is our web service working from a container here. And now I'm going to select an image and ask for a username, password, and now it's creating. Also, you can track the progress from here. Okay, hopefully we'll finish soon. And let's have a look from the portal. As you can see our resources created from VS Code. Okay, creating subnet. Okay, while we are waiting, I want to talk about other extensions. You can also create an API management, event create topics, subscriptions, function, and storage accounts, also database. And you can use the Kubernetes extensions to create AKS. You can create a cluster and create Azure Kubernetes Service or container source here. And I think our VM is ready. Okay, now I am going to connect this VM from SSH. I click this extension. It's come from an SSH extension. Okay, Linux. Okay, executive fingerprint. And this is the first phrase I entered while creating. Okay. Okay, now we're in the machine. Let's install and web server. apt-get install Nginx, and I'm going to install Nginx and say yes for all questions. Okay, now I'm going to right-click, copy IP address, and let's try if installed successfully. Yes, our Nginx is running from our VM. Also, I have 1 minute left. You can also start, restart, stop, or delete your virtual machines here. And the good thing is you can delete other resources related to your VM. Okay, I think my time is up. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Mert. I think everybody was glued. If anything was like me, I was there installing these extensions in my own VS Code now. There's a few I didn't have. No, I think that was fantastic, Mert. Thanks so much for that. Are there any questions? Can't see any in the chat there, Mert, but no, thank you very much. If everybody wants to come off mute and give Mert a round of applause for his fantastic session.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mert. Catch up with you soon.
You're welcome.
Okay, and on to our next guest. It's Mr. Chris Reddington. Over to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Can you all see my screen okay and hear me? Awesome. Thumbs up.
Okay.
So I'm going to drop something in the chat window. Feel free to respond as I just intro here. So we're going to be talking all about GitHub and how it can go and help you really in deploying a podcast site. I normally do a 45-minute, hour-long talk on this, so I'm condensing all of that into 15 minutes, and we're going to focus on GitHub Actions here. So for anyone who doesn't know me, Chris Reddington, you may be able to tell from the accent, I am a fellow Welshie as well, but I don't live in Wales anymore, unfortunately. I'm now in England. I know that may cause some controversy here, but we'll skip past that. But in my spare time, I am the host and producer of Cloud with Chris. So cloudwithchris.com, we'll take a look at that as we go through here. I'm also a co-organizer of another Azure user group, Thames Valley, and I'm also a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, just like a few folks in the intros there. So what I'm going to do is talk to you all about how I use GitHub to manage Cloud with Chris and what I do. And we're going to learn about GitHub Actions along the way here. So I guess we've already heard a little bit about GitHub already, that it's this really extensive platform. We heard earlier about the CodeQL functionality. We heard about Dependabot. And if you haven't heard about those before, definitely check them out, because I think GitHub is becoming this amazing security tool from a development perspective. But I think when people hear about GitHub, they normally think about Git and the version control. They don't really think about all the other features that are inside it. So we're going to really be focusing on the automation aspects of GitHub tonight. So there's a lot more to it, but in 15 minutes, that's all I'm going to be able to pack in. So definitely check some of the other areas out another time. So Cloud with Chris, let me just very quickly walk you through this architecture. There won't be any tests at the end, don't you worry. Effectively, 3 components that I use. I've got public DNS zones from Azure, I've got Azure CDN, and I've got storage accounts, and that is it. And super, super cheap, super, super nice and easy to go and deploy. I think my last month's bill was just under £4. So for the whole month running all those environments, less than £4. So with that context, the rest of it is going to be no slides. We're going to jump in, take a look at GitHub, take a look hands-on at GitHub Actions here as well. So what I'm showing you here is www.cloudwithchris.com, so my production website, effectively. I've got a few different websites, as you saw on the previous slides. So I've got a staging website, which is like my dev environment. And as you can see, as I switch tabs, it doesn't look like there's even any difference there because it's the same content right now. And I've also got a preview site here as well. And in preparation for tonight, I have got a preview site ready to go where I promote the Welsh Azure user group talk to be one that I've talked at rather than one that I've got coming up, for example, here. So what's actually going on here? What is all of these websites? What's all of this code? On screen here, you can see that I've got a GitHub repository, cloudwithchris.com. And let me just zoom in a little bit there. So all of my code is in here. You'll see here, for anyone familiar with version control, I've got different branches where I can go ahead and have the different effectively instances or areas for my code. So I've got this preview /WAUG. That's the code of the site we just looked at a moment ago. Now, the thing we're going to focus on is GitHub Actions here. So GitHub Actions is all about automation and CI/CD inside of GitHub. So as you can see here, I've got a number of these different workflows on the left-hand side. If you're coming from Azure DevOps, consider them like Azure pipelines. It's that kind of analogy. Then these are like my pipeline runs on the right-hand side here. So as an example, I earlier, prepping for this event, made a change in that preview branch to go ahead and promote the Welsh Azure user group to be a talk I've talked at rather than one coming up. So you can see here I've got this nice visual in terms of all of the different stages of my pipeline, as you'd expect if you've used any other tools like GitLab or Azure Pipelines or any of these other ones here as well. We can go ahead, we can go jump in, take a look at all the logs and go into all those things that we would expect to go and be able to do. Now, there's something interesting with GitHub Actions. If I jump into my GitHub repository and go to this .github folder and then workflows, these are all of the workflow files that you saw a moment ago. So they're all stored as YAML. So it's basically pipeline as code is what we're looking at there. Was there a question? Nope. Okay. So if we jump through, for example, I'm not going to go line by line here, as interesting as that would be. This is an example of my preview particular workflow there. And we can see there's got a number of different stages, number of different jobs going on in there. But what I want to do is jump back to the presentation a sec and just walk through a couple of interesting points around this. So number one is GitHub Actions is not just about CI/CD. It's not just about, fitting into your DevOps pipelines. It's also about automating some of those other things that you might be doing on GitHub as well. So as an example, if I check out my issues, I have a load of different episodes in my backlog that I work on. They all automatically get tagged in my project board here in my episode roadmap, so I can track them using Kanban. And that is all done using a GitHub action workflow. So if we jump across to the next page here, you can see that there are tons of these different events that we can actually go and trigger GitHub action workflows from. It's not just pushes, it's not just pull requests, it's not just commits. It could be things like a new issue comment coming in, or a new project being created, or a new issue being created. So when you think about that open source community, or even inner source, if you're using GitHub Enterprise and trying to manage and automate all of that stuff, GitHub Actions is a great tool in the tool bag to help you managing all of that there. So let's jump back to this slide. So we've got different triggers effectively. That's cool, all good. We've also got this runs on property here. So underneath a different stage, for example, we have these different types of jobs. You can see I've got this one job called linter. Could be a build job, could be something else. I've just called it linter. That's just its friendly name to myself. It runs on Ubuntu latest, and much like Azure Pipelines, you've got Windows runners, you've got Mac OS, and you've got Linux as well. And you can self-host your own if you like as well. Now, this is the particularly interesting thing. Does anyone spot anything interesting about this particular naming convention here of this users? And feel free to jump off mute if you do. Going once, going twice. Okay, so the interesting thing about this name here of this particular action is these are just referencing other GitHub repositories. That is the magic behind GitHub Actions here, right? If I jump across to my website, to my edge here, you can see that I've got this Azure/logins GitHub repository. That is the GitHub action to go and log in to Azure using GitHub Actions. And you'll see in here, there's an action.yaml. It's made out of nodes. There are two options to make these actions, node or Docker. And this is publicly hosted by the Azure team for anyone to go and log into their Azure subscription, for example. There's also another type of GitHub action as well. So you have some which are written in JavaScript, or I believe TypeScript. The other is using a Docker image or a Docker file. So for example, the Sonar Cloud one is actually building a Docker file, an image in Docker on the fly in your GitHub Actions workflow, spinning that up and running your commands, executing that job, and then spinning down. So the thing to bear in mind, coming back to Martyn's point earlier with GitHub Actions, like anything, your dependencies. Really be sure what dependencies you're taking in your pipeline, because if you don't know what's running in that Docker file or what's running in those scripts, and it's just coming from Chris Reddington's random repository on GitHub, can you trust me? And that's something you need to evaluate and just make sure when you're building your workflows there. So those are a few things there to take note of. A couple of other things as we start wrapping up, because we've got 5 minutes left here. You also have, just before Christmas, it was released, this functionality to deploy to environments inside of GitHub Actions as well. So environments does what it says on the tin. You could have an environment for production, for dev, for QA, etc. What you can do is associate that environment with some particular rules. So I need to approve that change to go into production, for example. So you're not automatically promoting things and breaking your production environment. End users wouldn't be very happy with that. Again, we looked at the kind of naming format here of these different GitHub Actions, and notice the @v1 afterwards as well on this one. That's saying that that particular repository, we can use the version of that repository when it was tagged with v1. That's what it's talking about there. And then we've got this $curly brace syntax to go and reference runtime expressions effectively. So this one is referencing some secrets that I have in my GitHub repository. So just to show you all of that, if we jump back to my repository and jump into settings, you'll see that as I go over to environments here, I have a number of these different environments set up. So I've got some environments for Azure, preview, staging, and production. I've also got staging environments for GCP and AWS, just because I was trying some things out and doing some tests. But you can see there that I've also got some secrets associated with these environments as well. So those secrets are only pulled into the runner if they are needing to be used, so if they reference the environment. Now you can see, for example, in this production.azure, I've got one protection rule here. And that protection rule says Chris Reddington is a required reviewer. And you can see there are my Azure_credentials. I can't see them. I can only update them. So that's the magic in terms of connecting back to that GitHub action, which is hosted in another GitHub repository, pulling in these secrets to connect to my Azure subscription there. So now, live demo time. Let's go and actually do something with that change I made earlier. We're going to go ahead. We're going to go and merge that into my staging environment. So let's go and merge that. All looks good to me. I reviewed it earlier. And I'm comfortable with those changes. So actually, we're going to go straight to production here as well. Because why not? Let's do a production release. There we go. Create that pull request. Now I just need to approve one of my checks here. And you get all of these nice checks, by the way, appear when you use these pull requests in GitHub. And you can see that in line, my GitHub actions, which we've been looking at all the way through here, are now appearing here. And I could make sure that I'm not allowed to merge to master or main until those checks have passed. I haven't got those rules enforced at the moment. I've left those as optional. So I can go ahead here, squash and merge, and push that off to my production environment. So now what we'll see is a number of different pipelines running, because one is closing my preview environment that I had and cleaning all of that up for me. One is deploying to dev, because we obviously promoted to dev a moment ago, and we quickly pushed that train up to production as well. One thing I do want to just highlight as well, the elephant in the room, is I'm using Azure storage accounts I mentioned earlier and CDN. Azure static websites could be another option. When I made my website, they weren't out at the time, but it is something I'm actually trialing and using at the moment as well. And they actually take away some of the overhead of some of the things I'm doing here, like the preview branches, the dev branches, and getting those separate instances of the sites. You'd still want to use CDN, for example, to replicate to users across the world. But there's now some options there, really cost-effective options. So with that, just to wrap us up because of time, if you want to learn any more, labs.github.com. Take a look, because there's a ton of great content up there to get learning Git and GitHub. Also, Microsoft Learn, there's a GitHub section there as well. And if you want the full version of the talk, I'm speaking on April the 6th at the Northern Azure User Group. And I feel like I am the side lackey kind of person because Scott Hanselman's talking at that one. So I'm the warm-up act for that one, I feel. But with that, that is me done. Thank you for listening, folks. And any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat window. Thank you.
No, many thanks, Chris. That was awesome. Brilliant. Great to see that. Thanks very much. Everybody needs to come off mute now and give you a clap. I know we've got those new virtual claps, haven't we? Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris. Speak to you soon. Okay, and we shall move promptly on. It's now 7:30. And Mr. Darren Robinson, I know he's in the room there somewhere. Darren, if you're there, if you can hear me, it's over to you.
Thanks, John. Am I sharing the right screen here? Can you see my?
Yeah, got your slides and can hear you brilliantly.
Okay, I'm going to go again. That's better. I think you can probably see me as well. Fantastic. Thanks, John. Thanks, guys. Yeah, just want to give you an overview of some of my experience migrating services up to Azure. I've only got 15 minutes, so I can't cover a huge amount. But my goal here is if there's one or two things that you can take away from this, that could potentially make any migrations you're involved in run much smoother. So that's the goal. Without further ado, I shall move on. So a great analogy I've seen for a migration is it's like trying to move a building whilst keeping everyone working and the lights on. These aren't exotic, exciting, necessarily popular events migrations, but they're absolutely critical, and they usually come with a very high focus from the senior management teams, both in your company and any clients that you're working with. Typical drivers for migrations are data center exits. Perhaps you've reached the contractual end of an agreement with a third-party data center provider. Reducing operational risk. Perhaps your security posture can be improved by moving all up to Azure, and licensing end of life. Hardware refresh is a really popular one, and you might have reached a cycle in your hardware refresh where you've got a choice of investing a large amount of capex or actually moving to an OpEx based model and moving up to Azure. So the key areas of the migration process, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into each of these. So your business case, so it's about gaining consensus, getting everybody on the same page, understanding exactly what it is you want to achieve. Discovery, which is about really understanding your inventory and exactly what is the state of it at the moment. We'll talk about that a bit more. Assessment, so that's really about dependencies, understanding once you've clarified the assets and you've got a clear picture of your inventory, then how do all those different assets hang together and what are the dependencies at the various layers in the stack. Then we move on to planning. So once we've gone through the discovery and assessment, we've then got a good enough picture to understand which applications or services we might be able to migrate in waves or phases. And then we're going to talk a little bit about migrations, the migrate phase. So first of all, the business case. Now, I'm not suggesting that this list I've got here form part of the business case. What I'm saying is, based on my experience, I would definitely recommend focusing on these areas at this point in the process. So whilst you're building the business case and getting that consensus, think about these areas to get ahead of the game. When people are defining the scope of the migration, always be mindful of the demands on the business. It's not just a technical exercise. And what I've seen regularly is that we underestimate the amount of business involvement that's required, so that when critical phases come, like testing, and you need those business users who know the system to actually perform some UAT testing, for example, are those people available? Because quite often they're constrained. And what I've found in migration activities regularly is that when we migrate, if we're not transforming, we're not really delivering the bells and whistles that a business wants. It's not necessarily the most exciting event for them. So it's quite hard to get them bought in. So think about that there. teams may be sensitive to losing control of infrastructure, especially if you're moving from an IaaS type situation where you might have on-premises servers and applications. You're moving to a PaaS situation, service like app service. Okay, so where you've got developers who've got that everyday access to those systems, are they going to have that access, and how are they going to feel about that? So think about that. Availability of staff. So do you need, you may not be the only program. Do you need to augment those resources and get additional staff in? New technologies, so training, of course, is worth thinking about at this stage. Dependencies on critical resource. Nearly always there are one or two people in an organisation who seem to have been around forever and seem to know everything. So again, it's at this stage, it's really worth focusing on that and thinking about these things, and is that person going to be available? It can be really tough if everybody's looking at your project or program, but it can be fantastic because everybody else gets parts while you get to do all your stuff and get the best people on your project. So that's definitely something that can help. Transformation, often people focus on transformation. Everyone wants to transform when they migrate, and that's often a possibility. But think about the scale of what you're transforming. Have you every time you do a transformation exercise, the more you change, the more you have to test, etc., that increases the effort involved. And if you're migrating big services, lots of services, hundreds or thousands of servers, depending on how long you've got to do that, it may not be possible to transform your environment. So definitely the balance is required, and you need to be pragmatic about what you do. Whilst haven't got time to really talk about the Azure services, and Techielas has done a brilliant job with that, so check her videos out. The Azure total cost of ownership tool can come in useful at this particular juncture when you're building the case. So discovery, what can we say about this? Organisations often, you don't really have a grip. I'm not saying you don't, but a lot of organisations don't really have an up-to-date inventory of what they've got. Perhaps they've outsourced, and perhaps that outsourcing arrangement's moved to another outsourcer and has come back in-house. All these sorts of things happen. So it's important before you do a migration to really focus on the current state, exactly what resources you've got. Stay there, the relationships between the services are critical. Social discovery and technical discovery. So don't just focus on technical discovery, focus on social discovery as well. And this is a critical point. So speak to people, get people in a room, find out what's not documented about these services, because that helps build relationships as well. And that helps when people might be sensitive about the work you're doing and the impacts on them. Don't forget the endpoints on clients. We focus on servers and services. It's always a perennial nightmare and often forgotten. So do focus on that. Actually, I missed one. Don't forget your tooling and services. So as technical people, what are the impacts of this migration on our services, or on the tools that we use on a day-to-day basis? Sometimes it's easy to focus on, think about applications, and we think about business applications and forget about the tools that we use on a daily basis. Plan a POC early, get people used to the process, get involved, start road testing different solutions. We've got a couple of products there that can help. We've got Azure Migrate, either agent or agentless discovery. I've used this. I've always found that the agent gives a bit more information, it seems to do at the moment, and the dependency mapping can come in useful as well. So moving on to the assess stage, considerations you've got here. You don't have to migrate an application. If you can retire it, fantastic. It might be possible to move to a SaaS-based solution, which is often great. Transformation, I said before about striking the balance there. So think about that and how much transformation activity you're taking on. At this point, it's worth ramping up on the proof of concept as well. If you started thinking about one during the discovery phase, focus now on actually delivering that whilst you're still assessing the applications. Don't wait until you've assessed. If there's something you discovered early on, so maybe it's a dev or test, then start going through the process and getting used to the tools at that point. I'll pick out a few here because I'm running out of, need to move quite quickly. Yeah, building automation. If you're not transforming, then whatever that, don't just lift and shift. Building automation, leverage things like Azure functions, infrastructure as code, desire state configuration. These are all things that can be integrated when you're when you're migrating and transforming without making big changes that need a lot of testing. So think about that. Big lesson learned here. Look very carefully at your Azure SKUs when you're migrating services up from on-premises, especially regarding some of those legacy OS like 2008 and 2012. Azure, they've tried to ensure backwards compatibility, but obviously the platform is moving on, and they can't always ensure backwards compatibility. Every day those legacy OSs get a little bit further away from the latest Microsoft capabilities. Keep the business engaged, keep them on side, and use the migrate server assessments for cost projection at this point. So planning, so you've done the discovery, you've done the assessment, so you know you've identified what's the best placement for your services and applications, whether that's IaaS, PaaS, or whether you're going up to SaaS for some of them. Yeah, so simple services, hone the process. You're going through this migration process over and over again with the different waves. Pick things that are not, initially pick things that are not going to break the business, and then move on from that for things that are production. When you start looking at production, pick production applications that are relatively straightforward, like 2 or 3 tier applications. Build technical runbooks wherever you can, even if it comes down to including command line options as well. Really work on that. Define the business testing scope. Dress rehearsal's lovely if you've got a huge amount of time on your hands, and you can actually go through a dress rehearsal activity before the migration, and then roll back, and you'll learn a lot from that. So when you go for the migration activity, which is often over a weekend, etc., have a clear sequence of events for the migration. Understand who's doing what, in what order. Understand your point of no return. So if you're going all weekend, you finish on a Sunday morning, at what point is the last point you can roll back? If you go past that point, is everybody happy to fix forward and just resolve whatever is broken before Monday? There's a few cutover tools over there. So rather than working through big spreadsheets with lots and lots of different tasks on that all have to be executed by different teams in a certain order, there are tools that can help with that. Ensure that your triage team have a process for triaging. So if it might be early in the morning on a Saturday morning, people have been working all week. If there's a problem, who's going to fix it, and what's the process going to be enacted to fix that? So you'll escalate to the triage team, they'll resolve and get back to you. So be mindful of fatigue. Often the people that are performing these migration activities have been working all week as well. It comes down to those critical resources that we all rely on, who seem to know the environment and have been there for forever. So in conclusion, so you need a pragmatic approach to transformation. Avoid introducing lots of technical debt. So when you're migrating up, don't just lift and shift. Start your proof of concept early in the process. Focus as well on social discovery, so getting teams together and understanding exactly what they want out of it, and getting a better feel of how these services have been built over time. Again, reiterate, check the cloud service SKUs. Don't get caught assuming that certain certain services are going to support your applications when you might need to. It might blow the budget when you haven't checked that out. And make sure you keep in contact with the business throughout the engagement. They're the most important people, and I would say of all these elements, it's stakeholder management that's the most important. So that's that. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'll happily take them.
Darren, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I don't think I spotted any questions in the chat, but I guess if anybody's got any now for Darren, then drop them in there.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, John, I hope people got 1 or 2 things out of it. And if anybody wants to get in touch, my handle's there. Find me via you, probably.
No, absolutely no. Brilliant talk, Darren. And yeah, I resonate with a lot of those points you made myself. So Many thanks. Thanks for your time tonight. If everybody wants to come off mute and give Darren a round of applause. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Catch up soon. Okay, let's move swiftly on. We have got Mr. Neil McLoughlin, who has, well, can't thank you enough, Neil, for stepping in at the last minute there and getting your demo sorted for us tonight. So on that note,
no problem.
Over to you.
Okay, sure. But it's not going to be the best presentation ever because, as you know, I've only had a few hours prep because Baz was supposed to do one. So I'll do my best. Let me just share my screen. And you can see yourselves and then share my presentation. Okay, so tonight I'm going to give a quick presentation on using Nerdio Manager for WD to do your imaging on Windows Virtual Desktop. So a very quick introduction to myself. So my name is Neil McLoughlin. I'm based in Manchester. I'm currently the UK field CTO for Nerdio. I've been doing that role for 3 weeks now, so still very, very new to the role. And for those who don't know me, I also run the WVD community, which I set up around a year ago, which has been going really well. So we've got a lot of user groups based around the world as well. I'm also a Microsoft MVP as well, so you can find me on Twitter at VirtualMank and also at WVD Community. I also run the UK Windows Virtual Desktop user group as well, so we hold monthly meetings of that. So if you're interested in WVD, are in the UK or Wales or Scotland or Ireland or anywhere around the world, come have a look at this and check us out. So as I mentioned before, today I'm going to talk to you about image management using Nerdio Manager for WVD. It's very, very powerful. I'll hope to show you some pretty cool stuff today. And I've done a quick demo as well, and just to show how quickly it is to deploy stuff. So we'll just go through the slides and then hopefully we'll get to see some stuff and do some stuff. So the agenda introduction, which is just done. We're going to talk a bit about the old world and the new world, and then what I said before about the demo. So a bit about Nerdio. So what we do is essentially we make deploying and managing Windows Virtual Desktop a bit easier. For those who have done it, it can be a bit clunky. I think obviously the people who are on this presentation tonight, it's probably they find it quite easy because obviously you've got the necessary skills. I've got this in the slide before, but if you think about someone who comes from an EUC background who doesn't have all these sort of there's sort of DevOpsy type skills and PowerShell scripting and JSON, all that stuff. Deploying Windows Virtual Desktop could be potentially a bit tricky, a very, very steep learning curve. Nerdio sort of kind of help us fill that gap. So basically what we do, we make managing Windows Virtual Desktop easier. So we've got a nice GUI, which I'll show you. So basically, instead of having to rely on, say, John Dunn to go and create this DevOps pipeline, so you can deploy your desktops, anyone can do it. So it makes it really easy to use. Also, if you want to go deep dive into all the PowerShell stuff, you can do. I'll show you all the scripted actions that we've got running as part of the presentation. Also, auto scaling, we've got our own auto scaling engine for Windows Virtual Desktop, so we can scale hosts based on the user density or the CPU usage or lots of different stuff. So it makes auto scaling basically at the click of a button rather than having to start sort of creating Azure runbooks and configuring them and checking out the times and all that stuff. Again, I'll hopefully take you through that if we get time as well. So, a bit of history lesson. I've been around for more than 20 years in IT. My very first job, I started out using Norton Ghost. I used to start in sort of basements, companies and image PCs basically. So that's essentially where we started with image management, right? You get a golden image, you get a hardware device, you'd install all your applications onto it, you'd sysprep it, and then you take that as your golden image, and then you'd actually clone that golden image using applications like Norton Ghost onto your target devices. So we moved on from there, and then we went into the world of sort of SCCM and task sequences and MDAPs and stuff like that. Things got a bit easier, but they were still kind of a bit clunky and still not certainly where we are today. I know some of you on this meeting, you may not have even done this in your life before, but this is where I started my career. It was interesting. It probably took you about half a day or a day to fully configure a single PC. So things move slow, but we weren't sort of advanced as we are today. Then fast forward sort of 10 years, still things pretty much the same, really. I mean, when you talk about imaging Windows XP, and you talk about when using Windows 7, even Windows 10, you're still kind of using MDT task sequences and stuff like that. But that's certainly for the physical world. But when we go into a virtual world, obviously it gets very, very different, as we were about to discover. So now, I mean, obviously I skipped the slide, but the one that I'm going to add in, not having enough time, was around the sort of in-between stage where we've got virtualization. So we've got stuff like cloning VMware images and using Citrix MCS to create images, stuff like that. That made things a lot better. But now the kind of world that we live in today with Windows Virtual Desktop is a very, very, very different place where we were even kind of 3 years ago. So myself, I started on my Windows Virtual Desktop journey at the very beginning of WVD, and I didn't really know Azure that well. I'd done the exams, but I didn't have that much hands-on. I went feet in first into Windows Virtual Desktop, and it was a very, very, very steep learning curve. I've been focused on it myself purely probably for the past 12 to 18 months, and I'm nowhere near an expert. What I've seen out there is the people who are like yourselves on this call, who have those native Azure skills, have a very, very big head start, because to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop at scale and well, this is what you need to be doing if you have that skill set. Okay, so you need to be using Packer, you need to be running DevOps pipelines, you're using PowerShell, ARM templates, JSON, Terraform. There's only a certain amount you can get through if you're just using the portal. When you start talking scale, I mean, I think someone we get on a call, they mentioned deploying 72,000 user desktops. You can't do that native through the portal. You need to be using template files and JSON on all that kind of stuff. Now, if you think about that from an EUC guy perspective, he's not going to have a clue. He's going to struggle. So the question is, who in the Windows Virtual Desktop environment, who manages your EUC? Is it your EUC guy or is it your Azure guy? At the moment, I'm seeing a switch to very more towards the Azure team, but are they the right person to do it? So that's kind of where Nerdio kind of fits in with this, and it's one of the reasons why I fell in love so much with Nerdio, because it makes the stuff that we're doing here so easy and so accessible to anyone who doesn't have that strong Azure skill set. So essentially, if I want to deploy a Nerdio image, so this is one that I've done earlier today, and this is all I did. Okay, so this is one screen to deploy one image, and the equivalent to do that in the portal will require probably different ARM templates, maybe a couple of hours worth of work and stuff, but using Nerdio would just make it so easy. So essentially all we have to do, we need to put in the name of the image, description of it, just click what network we're going to connect to. Obviously you need those VNets created previously, and then the image which we're basing it on. So I'll show you shortly, but you can use the drop-down box to basically select which image you want to use. So you can use Server 2019 if you really want to, or you can do the VM sizing, the OS disk, the resource group you want it to go into, tell it what AD domain you want it to join to. Again, those are all pre-configured settings that you just set once and configure once. Then we just enable the time zone redirection, set the time, and then we can also run. Again, I'll go into those a bit more detail in a minute, but we have these thing called scripted actions, which are very, very, very powerful. Think of it kind of like DevOps pipeline stuff where you can go off and do other stuff. We can create our own scripted actions. We're essentially our own PowerShell scripts. And whoever is creating and managing the virtual machine or the desktop image, they can select what they want in there. Okay, so it makes creating the images really, really, really easy. As I said, I did this image from start to finish. It took me 2 hours. And that's not 2 hours just to create the image. That's 2 hours to create the image, deploy a host pool, add the user to a host pool, create a host, and connect to the desktop in 2 hours. So that's how quickly you can do it. So if you think you've got, I don't know, 20,000 desktops, it's not a problem. We can create an image, get it out there within days, literally. So really, really, really powerful stuff. Makes it really, really, really easy. So these are the scripted actions that I was just telling you about. So we have the option to add these. So just what I saw before, you can run them. So we can just go in, click all of these. So I can install Zoom, I can do the optimizations, we can grant user local admin rights, we can install Google Chrome, lots and lots of different stuff. And also you can add your own. So these scripted actions, they run inside the operating system itself using local system context. So permissions shouldn't really be a problem. And they run using the custom script extension, which hopefully I'll take you through as well in a minute. We've also got the ability to do Azure Runbox as well. So if you've got anything which needs to be run against the VM, either inside or outside the operating system, we can do that as well. So that uses the Azure automation. All you have to do is click enable, the automation account's automatically created for you. And it also runs using a service principal, which again is always automatically created for you. So we do have some default ones which you create, but again, you can create your own as well if you want to. So what else can we do? We can clone images, we can back up the images, restore them. We've got changelog in there as well, which you want to put stuff in there. We can run scripted actions, which just shows you, we can run those either against the host pools or the host or the actual images themselves. So the possibilities are endless. Within the Nerdio console, we can get logs off the machines as well. If you want to do some troubleshooting without having to start looking into sort of Azure file shares and stuff. We've also got a really cool thing called auto heal broken host. So if there's a problem with your image, Nerdio will detect it and automatically fix that for you. So if the host is unavailable, there's no heartbeat, or the FS log agent is unhealthy, or it's not joined to the domain or something, we can tell Nerdio to basically rebuild it, or it'll just remove it from the host pool. So kind of keeps your host pools healthy all the time. As mentioned, all these brand new features which have come out in the last few releases. So as of next week, we can run Windows scripts, do runbooks, global Azure runbooks, and they can run on VM, start, create, delete, you name it. There's lots of different triggers you can do it. We're also looking as well for community input. So if you've got a really cool script which you use to manage your hosts, if you want to share it with the community, let us know, and we can include that as a scripted action and make that available to anyone. So it just makes run the host a lot easier and easier for everyone. Right, so I will very, very quickly do a demo. So for tonight, what I basically did was I very quickly set up a host pool. So let me show you the log files to show what you could do. So logs. Yeah, so all I've done is here. So I literally started this off at 5:30, and it just finished not long ago. So these are all the stuff in here. So as you can see, adding the host, it does all the images for you. It creates the VM, it adds it to the domain, it installs all the agents for you, the FS logics, and restarts the VM and does all the ARM stuff. So it basically does everything for you. And just to prove that I'm not lying, it's a load of rubbish. So this is what was output. So what I've actually done here, is created this image today. Literally, I started at 5:30. We've installed OneDrive. We've done the optimization as well on the image, so it's fully optimized to Windows Virtual Desktop. We've installed VS Code and we've installed Notepad++. And now we do all this by Chocolatey. So that's something I've been playing about with. So obviously, when you think about Chocolatey, it's endless because there's literally about 8,000 applications within Chocolatey. And these are those scripts which install that. So all I did was I created this literally probably 15 minutes ago. And all that does, you got some code in there, and then you can add the code in there. That's all you do. And then they say there's literally like 8,000 applications that within the Chocolatey portal that you can choose. But these PowerShell scripts you can add in your own. So these are the runbooks, again, which you can run against everything. So we've got, for default ones, we've got OS disk encryption. So these are all scripts that we use, so we can run those against the VM at any time. And also, obviously, this is the desktop image that I just created earlier. So in here, I can go in here, I can clone it, delete it, back it up, change log, or I can run the scripted actions again. So if I want to run Windows Update on it, I can just do that. There's a scripted action somewhere. Yep, so update Windows 10. Okay. That will then go power on the VM and then patch it. And so the next host pool which is created from that image will then be created and use the latest image. And also what we can do, we can schedule the host to rebuild every month or week or whatever, based on those scripted actions as well. So You can set it to kind of complete automation, where once a month, all the hosts the image will get updated, and then all the hosts will get rebuilt. So completely hands-off automation, and then obviously if it goes wrong, you can go back and just revert to backups and stuff like that as well. And I believe that's it. My time is up.
Neil, fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, there's me. Neil, I think we had one quick question from Chris in the chat. He just said, do you know if there's any kind of community licensing available for Nerdio?
Yes, there is. There's a community edition. So I'll put that in the chat window.
Awesome. Neil, thanks again. Thanks so much. If everybody wants to come off mute now and give Neil a round of applause, just prepping that with minimal time. Awesome. Thank you. Great. Okay, and on to the next talk. We have Mr. Shabaz Darr in the house, who's going to come and talk to us about Veeam and backing up your Azure files. Over to you, Shabaz. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. How are you? There I am as well.
There you are. You have to share your screen to get rid of our ugly mug.
Do it now. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's it. Cool.
I'm very conscious Michael Cade's on the call as well, and he's Mr. Veeam, so I better do well. Thank you everyone for joining. Bit about me. My name is Shabaz Darr. I'm a senior infrastructure consultant at Netcompany, a Danish company, but I'm based in the UK. A little bit of self-plugging. My Twitter feed is at Shabaz Darr, which you can hit me up on whenever you want. I've got my own YouTube channel, which I do technical content on, mainly around Microsoft Cloud. I also got a blog site, both called I Am IT Geek. So I will move on. So yeah, this evening my lightning talk is around backup and recovery for Azure files using Veeam, Veeam backup replication. So quick overview of what I'm going to try and cover. I'm going to try and whiz through my slides and get into my demo. Let's do a quick overview of what Veeam backup for Azure files is. A couple of different use cases that you can utilize it in. I'll go into some what I've called solution components, but essentially I'll just look at two of the use cases and some of the components you'd need to implement them, and then we'll get onto the good stuff. A little bit of a demo that I've prepped for. So Veeam backup replication, so specifically Veeam backup for Azure files, started getting the support for it started in version 10A, if I'm not mistaken, and this is where the support started for the NFS 4.1 on Azure files. So it's not available in older versions up to 10A, and then it's obviously available in the newer version, I think 11, if I'm not mistaken. So Veeam backup and replication uses your Azure storage account credentials to access your Azure file share. So as I'll show in the demo, you add your cloud credentials into Veeam, and that's how it makes the connection, and it retrieves those contents using Veeam's enhanced NAS backup technology. Now, something that's a best practice is to set up an Azure private endpoint. Again, I'm going to be showing this in my demo. And this is recommended to, an implementation that's recommended to leverage the additional kind of network side security. So you can essentially lock down your Azure files to a specific VNet or even your on-premises network. It just makes it so it's more secure and not open to the internet. A couple of use cases. The first use case is a simple one, which I'm going to be showing in my demo, which is just backing up data that's stored in Azure files. So I won't be doing a backup, but I'm just going to show all the kind of configuration to get to the point where we can do a backup. Another use case is you can store offsite backups for your Azure NFS 4.1 file shares. You can do it in a different region or using to a different type of media. So you could do it to blob storage, for example, if you wanted to archive into object storage. Final use cases, you can migrate from on-premises into the cloud, or you can do like a hybrid cloud solution with protected workloads residing in Azure and on-premises. So you've got kind of the best of both worlds. So this is just a quick diagram that I did, and it just shows so the within Azure the sort of components that you'd kind of require. So as you can see, we've got Veeam infrastructures on two different regions, and what we have is VNet peering connecting both of those two regions. On the left-hand side, you've got your short-term retentions for your Azure files, and you've got your VNet obviously there, and your Veeam backup replication server, like a VM within Azure. On this side, you've got your more long-term retention. So this is where you'd have your object storage, so your Azure blobs and some other repos, repositories. Obviously, your second private network doing that peering. So this is more of the hybrid one, the hybrid use case that I mentioned. So we have our on-premises network and infrastructure here with repositories and proxies. And then we have a VPN or an express route to two separate sort of regions, Azure Region 1 and Azure Region 2. And again, they're also connected through VNet to VNet peering. And we've got, as you can see, we've got a bit more resources than we had in the first Azure only one. We've got more repositories. Again, this is more for short-term retention, so you might have a bit more expensive storage here. We've got file proxy servers here. We've also got our Azure NFS on the short-term retention side, so we could be backing up on-premises to our Azure files, or migrating workloads to Azure from on-premises. And then we've also got, for our more long-term retention, the second region, where again we've got offsite repositories that could be, for longer term retention, you probably want to use object storage, so Azure blob storage. And again, we've got some proxies on this side to help with the bandwidth and traffic. And again, VNet to VNet peering. So I've whizzed through those slides, and now I'm going to just do my demo quickly. So the first part of it is I'm going to go into the Azure portal and show you some of the components that we're going to configure. Find the right one. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. So I've got a tenancy here. This is my kind of demo tenant that I use, my IMIT Geek one. And we obviously need to create the Azure file share first. So I've got a resource group already. I've got a network as well already set up. So those are the kind of prerequisites. I've also got my Veeam server within Azure as well, just for the demo. So if we go to storage accounts, we want to create a storage account first. So I'm going to put it in my, sorry if I'm teaching you all to suck eggs, but it's just got a couple of points that are different for the NFS share. So we'll just call it SA01. Now, the key bit here is the performance tier. Now, with standard, obviously you only have 3 available options: your storage v2, your storage general purpose, and then your blob storage. To get the NFS Azure files created, we need to pick premium. And on the drop down the account kind, you will notice that we have file storage available now. So click on that. Again, dealer's choice, what sort of replication you want. I'm just going to stick to the default one. Now, for networking, again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to go and leave this at default because I want to create the private endpoint once we've provisioned the storage account, because I want to go through that separately. So I'm just going to leave all this on default. Again, these are various options around recovery and turning off on soft delete or versioning for blob storage and for containers. Again, I'm going to leave this on default for the purpose of the demo. One key element here that caught me out, if anyone follows me on Twitter, you will see when I was first trying to demo this a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I really struggled. And it was the issue that I found was this option here. So secure transfer required. For whatever reason, when it's enabled, from what I found out, I think it does some sort of double encryption, and Veeam just can't find your NFS share. So disabling that sorts that issue out. So make sure you disable your secure transfer required. I'm just going to leave the tags there, and we'll quickly just create that. Because I've only got 15 minutes, I can hear like the countdown timer, from that show, Countdown, in my ear, even though it's not playing, it's just in my head. But okay, once that's provisioned, hopefully in a few quick minutes, I'll go into it and create the private endpoint. should have created one before, shouldn't I, and use that rather than this. Ah, yes. Okay, so we're in our storage account here, and what we want to do is we want to create that private endpoint that we discussed earlier. So if we go down to networking, I mean, you can create it, you should really create it when you're doing the storage account, but just to keep it separate and show the steps, I wanted to do it separately. So again, here you can for the firewalls and networks, you can select specific networks, your own premises, if you have a VPN set up, or your VNet. I'm just going to leave that on default just for the sake of this demo. Click on private endpoint connections, and we go private endpoint. Again, all these sort of standard options here, making sure it's in your resource group. Let's give it a quick name. And then make sure it's in my region. So we'll leave this on file because that's the only option you get. Again, I'm sure for those who have created it before, sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs. And then we'll just quickly create that, and that should take hopefully not too long. And once this is created, I'm just going to hop into my back to my storage account. Actually, while that's creating, I'll go back into my storage account and create the Azure files. So we're back in the storage account, and we want the file shares here. Click on file share, and as you can see, we've got the option down here, the protocol to select NFS. I'll go into root squash in a second. Let's give this a name. So root squash is to do with more to do with permissions. So again, you can have a bit more further read into it and select which one you want. But for the purpose of a demo, I'm gonna use no root squash. And I think if in the documentation, if you follow kind of any Microsoft documentation, it normally says to do no root squash. But this is basically enhancing the user rights of the root user to the NFS share. So we'll give that a couple more, bit more time. What I'll do is while that's creating, I will flip over to my Veeam server. Can you see that one okay?
Yep, got you.
Perfect. So the endpoint is still creating, but hopefully it shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Yeah, it's created. Excellent. Okay, so we're in our Veeam console here. And what we want to do is if we go to inventory, we want to add in the file share. At the moment, we don't have anything. So if you go to inventory within Veeam and file shares, we want to add a file share. I've got different loads of options here, and the one we're concerned with in this demo is adding the NFS share. Just going to over there, the screen, I'll bring it over here. Now what we need here is the NFS file share. It's like a link, and what I'll quickly do is, should have really shown this before, I'm going to hop over to my window here again. So back in the Azure portal here, to get that that file share, if you click on your actual file share that you created, and here it has all the syntax you need to connect to through Linux. There's one part of it that we need, which is this element here. So after the mount -t NFS, copy that all the way to there. So as you can see, it's got the DNS sort of location in my storage account and then the actual file share name. So if I copy that, I'll flip straight back over to, sorry, this isn't good form flipping from screen to scene. And I'll paste it in there and then click next. So here you can, if you've got any proxies set up, by all means, you can, I believe, on all proxies as default, you can choose a specific one. Click on apply. This worked earlier on this afternoon when I did it, so
Double check, Shabaz. I think you might have copied a white space at the beginning of that URL. If it fails.
Thank you for spotting that. Like it's going to fail. Is it a problem if I go a minute over?
Not at all.
No, I'm just breathing down your neck. So just go ahead.
You got Rolf in the wings.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Take your time. I think the finishing should be done here.
This is the last thing I need to show. So it's it's gonna fail. Hey, it didn't. It was stuck ages. Right, so that's applying, and it's added it, which is great. So here it is, an FS, and then again from here we can, as and when we've got data in here, which I don't have at the moment, we can add that to a backup job and back up our NFS file shares. So that's me done. A minute over. Sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Shabaz.
Thank you.
Everybody would like to come off mute and give Shabaz a round of applause. Thanks so much for giving up your time tonight. That was awesome. Thank you, matey. Okay, and last but by certainly means not least, we have Mr. Rolf McLaughlin. Over to you, Rolf. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. So let's kick tires and share my screen here whenever I find the share button, and also start the presentation thing here. Wait, that was one click too early. Let's take this desktop, and that should do the trick here. Go down here, should be good. You see the tree in the elemental. Let's go from the beginning. So licenses, subscriptions. So there is no demo. You can relax. You can just chill. There is no graphical user interface or anything. It's just boring slides. But sometimes there is a little bit of a devil hidden in this licenses and this subscription bits here. Just a quick intro. To myself, my name is Rolf McLaughlin, Cloud Solution Architect and Director of the Cloud 42. I happen to have worked with Microsoft, for Microsoft as CSA for quite a while. In that quality, I had the chance to also teach one or the other CSAs how to do architectures. And this is why I dare to dabble into this kind of things, because many customers have some issues with the licenses. And yeah, let's go into this quickly because we only have a few minutes left here. So Microsoft, of course, makes it very easy to order licenses because they just want to sell the stuff in the Azure portal, in the Office 365 portal, Power BI, you name it, you have it. Any product with its individual portal, you just click buy here and you're done. Of course, this is the off-the-shelf prices, a great way to make money for Microsoft, but sometimes you have some other stuff in the background and you have pre-negotiated, etc. And you want to make sure that when you're in this quality that you have the right prices assigned to this. If you just go into the portal and buy stuff, you normally have the worst of all prices, which makes the stock owners of Microsoft stocks very happy. Having said that, let's go and look a little bit into the background. How is it really working in the background if you're doing it the right way, if you negotiate your contracts beforehand. And we have three tiers, steps, whatever you may call that. When you have a seller from Microsoft in the house as a customer, you negotiate, and all of the negotiation results are put in a customer pricing sheet, or in short, CPS. Who would have thought that? And then each of the product gets a price and the amount of licenses behind this, and so on and so on. And this is sometimes a very lengthy process because it needs to be signed and sealed, reviewed by legal, and all of this is a very complicated and sometimes very lengthy process that everybody says, yep, this is the amount of licenses, this is the amount of money we are ready and willing to pay. Now, after all this ink is dry, it gets processed down my motorway here in Dublin. And then if you have not had that before, Microsoft creates a contractual tenant, And please, 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 please do not confuse this contractual tenant with the Azure Active Directory tenant or a tenant that you know from the technology side. This contractual tenant is more or less your SAP account where Microsoft is able to bill you. And that means that you have to have your legal state as a company, as an legal entity per se, and that they're able to just send you the bill for whatever you are consuming, whatever you are using here. So this internal processing itself takes another few weeks until that is done and dusted and sealed and all the mails are sent out and everybody is happy around this. As a little result of this, in step number 3, you get something that is called a public customer number, or short PCN. Who would have thought another 3-letter abbreviation here? And now when somebody inside the customer says, hey, I need some more licenses, or from the quality of license that we agreed on, give me the next batch, you always have to reference this PCN number. And these PCN numbers then are part of the whole journey, because this number is assigned to so-called enrollments and agreement numbers, which is all a little bit of, what are you talking about? I'm a techie. I don't want to know anything about this. But once you start to talk with the bigwigs in the larger companies, they will grill you when it comes to this kind of things. Now, part 2 of how it is tied together in the background. Let's look at the big block at the top here, moving a PCN from one technical tenant to another one of the same customer also moves all of the licenses to the new technical tenant. Means if you have one Azure Active Directory and you have, for example, AAD P2 license and you want to move the block with that, all the P2 licenses will be added to the other technical tenants. So Contoso.com and Tailspintoys.com, Tailspin Toys will get all your P2s. But if you have some M365 licenses under the same PCN or some Power BI licenses, they are going with this move. It is possible, but maybe that is not the thing that you want to have. Now, in order to have the chance to use a license inside a technical tenant, inside an Azure Active Directory or an Office 365, the PCN numbers, they all need to be stitched together with this enrollment and agreement numbers. And I will go into this background number 3 in a moment. But in order to be able to have multiple technical tenants, you need something that tells Microsoft that you want to have multiple Azure Active Directories, multiple instances of maybe a dev test environment, a Q&A environment, and then the production environment. If you have this kind of slice and dice thing, you have to have something. In the old days, it was called M130 amendment, 131 was the next version, and so on and so on. But it all starts in these areas. Listen carefully. PCNs can only be assigned to one Azure tenant. So that's a little bit of a caveat here when it comes to moving around licenses if they're wrongly assigned, etc. It will all come a little bit clearer, more clear when I show the next slide here. PCNs can have several agreements, and you have to have a default technical tenant. And of course, it's normally always the first one. So stay tuned. We're going to go how it actually looks like in the background. This was just smoke screens and figures and 3-letter acronyms and stuff like that. Let's really see how that looks like in the reality. Now, if you have, for example, a lot of licenses, you have agreed to have a Dynamics 365, Azure Active Directory, Dynamics, or an Exchange Online, Power BI Pro, and so on and so on. All of these licenses are agreed in this pricing sheet. And the customer said, yeah, give me this amount of licenses. For example, Power BI, give me 500, or Exchange Online, give me 1,000, and so on. These are added to one enrollment, and this enrollment is stitched to the PCN number. And as you can see from this one line here, a PCN can go into one tenant. In this case, I've called it main.onmicrosoft.com. It could also be your custom DNS name, but public customer numbers are stitched to one tenant. Yes, you can have multiple PCNs. Multiple PCNs means that you have, for example, historical contracts, or you have multinational contracts. This is the reason why you have multiple public customer numbers. Many sub-companies in a large enterprise, each of them has a legal entity quality, and each legal entity will have a PCN. And since they're all coming together in one Azure Active Directory, then you have a chance to tie that together. Now, it's all this slight blue multi-shape thing here. If you now decide, hey, I want to move the Power BI license because I need it in project 1, you cannot move the Power BI license because they're coming through this enrollment and through this public customer name, and therefore it's unassignable. Now, if project 1 says, can we please get our Power BI license? And procurement said, yeah, we ordered them 6 weeks ago. We even clicked on the mails and they should be there. Yes, they are there, but they landed and ended up in the main.onmicrosoft.com, where you then have the chance for the Azure subscriptions or the Office 365 or the Power BI subscription. Now, in order to enable Project 1 as a technical tenant, that it gets its own batch of license capabilities, you need a new enrollment. You need a new public customer number. So you're faking a company and put it on this custom pricing sheet together with the seller from Microsoft, that you're able to drop your licenses exactly into the tenant of your desire. And you have to bring procurement to the table, that they know what they're ordering and for what tenant they're ordering it. It is not this one department is doing this stuff and the other department is doing this stuff and they live happily ever after. That is not the case. So you want to make sure that in the very beginning, when it comes to licensing, you are creating an area where everybody knows we will need technical tenants in multiple colors and shapes, and that could end up that we need to order licenses for dev or test or whatever, and that we need public customer numbers separated by different enrollments, etc. But that's it. Is it? Oh no, just one more thing. This invitation mails, Azure, Office 365, EMS, or whatever mail you get. This is the thing where you, wow, hey, you're complete, you're done, online services, go ahead and sign in. No, don't sign in. The one who gets this mail is the one who signs the CPS. It's the one from procurement. Guess what? They don't know anything and they don't care about anything in the technical tenant and how the licenses really end up in the technical tenant. So the real thing is, so you get this mail, somebody, or first of all, you want to make sure that the right email is on this invitation mails. You need your licensing partner or licensing specialist in there. Then this, if this mail just shows up there, you want to make sure that the mail is routed in the company to the right technical admins for that one tenant. Use an anonymous browser session, incognito session, log in with a global admin of that one tenant that needs these licenses. And then you go and create the security context, and then you paste that link and activate that link for that tenant, which actually ends up, hey, we have the license in the tenant. Most of the time it works. Sometimes from previous enrollments, etc., errors, etc., it can happen that the assignments still go wrong. Involve support, Microsoft support. They have seen this on a daily basis, regularly. So support call, reassign the enrollment to the right tenant, and then you're happy and you have your licenses in your target tenant. And now the fun stuff starts, assigning the licenses to the end users. That's all, guys, and thanks for having me, and thanks for all the fish. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rolf. That was great. And yeah, I mean, really good insight into it's certainly something that I've not really paid too much attention to before. And that's really great insight to see that info. So
just give you a background.
Thank you so much.
I had one customer that needed 4 months to solve the puzzle of the licenses. and the previous cloud solution architect had 6 months of not getting it settled. So in total, it was nearly a year for the customer to sort this. A customer with about 60,000 seats, and they were pressing for this kind of licensing thing. So out of experience, it works.
I've heard of similar stories myself as well. But I will definitely be watching that back and taking note.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Rolf. Thanks so much. If everybody wants to come off mute now and give your appreciation. Thanks for joining us, Rolf. Really appreciate that. Okay, so the time has come. It's quiz time. Don't go anywhere. We've got the quiz. We're going to hand over to Ahmed's desktop. If you're there, Ahmed.
Yeah.
Everybody.
It's on its way. I'm fixing it in the background. In the meantime, you can make some jokes in the meantime.
I can't make any jokes. Somebody wants to come on and do a stand-up session for 2 minutes. Yeah, if everybody can stick around. In fact, no, you're going to share your screen. I'll be putting the link up for the feedback form as well after the quiz, everyone. So it would be really great if you could fill that in for us. Like I say, we try our hardest to kind of arrange these sessions to meet the demands from you as the audience. Are you sharing your screen, Ahmed?
Yep. I just put the pin in the chat.
Oh,
so
cool. Okay.
I will share my screen as well.
So if everybody's got Kahoot, do you want me to compare? I don't mind comparing, Ahmed.
Sorry?
I don't mind reading the questions out now.
Okay, sure. You go ahead. But let's see.
I'm taking no responsibility for the difficulty of these questions. I had a sneak peek earlier, and yeah, it's just going to be interesting.
Took it a bit too serious.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's definitely going to get everybody's brains ticking a little bit. We give it a few minutes now to let everybody on. If you're struggling to get on for any reason, just drop us a quick note in the chat, and obviously we'll hold up until you're ready. Yeah, generally, if you've got any comments and you want to put them in the chat, I mean, how did everybody find the Lightning Talk sessions? Obviously, it's the first for the Welsh Azure user group. Good, bad, anything, feedback in the chat? We'll wait until you get the feedback form. That'd be cool. And if you've got any ideas, how many are we at? 22. Is there any more for any more now? Any more? How many people have we actually got? We got in the 30s. So is there anybody struggling to get on? There we are. We've got a few more. Not just yet. Cool. Yeah, and on that note, like Chris is saying in the chat there's several other user groups dotted around the UK and of course, you know, globally that we can all join virtually at the moment. So everybody, if you can, show your support to everybody else's groups. That would be awesome. One big happy Azure family as we are. Cloud family. Okay. Coffee Island. Yeah, sorry, Carl. Jeez. Should we make a start? Yeah, I think so. 24 seems to be static. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Right, what programming language is Terraform written in? Java, C, Python, or Go?
It's Go.
Oh, no, you're not meant to.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Come on, June.
You're not being really competitive there.
Oh, I didn't see.
We're going to have June telling us all the answers now, and I'm going to be like, well, I found these questions quite difficult.
Oh.
So
I tuned out and got scared and snapped back.
Okay, next question. What is a Terraform reserved word to find the length of an array?
I don't take responsibility for this.
I can't read properly, clearly. The answer is length. 11 people got that one right. Oh, have we not got the Oh, there we go. Who's leading? TC. TC's gone top. Michael Carday.
Yeah.
Second place. Let's go. Let's go. Question number 3. Which of the following signifies the marking of a resource to be destroyed and eventually recreated in Terraform? The answer is taint.
Yeah, a bit tricky.
Yeah. Oh, Michael is on fire. He's got 3 in a row. Question number 4. What is the last phase of Microsoft's cloud adoption framework? Adopt, ready, manage, or govern? This is a tricky one because it's I feel we'll have some fallout over that one, Ahmed.
Maybe, yeah. we can
manage and govern are seen as phases that go throughout. Yeah, Carl, not happy with that one, Ahmed.
Okay, next.
Question number 5, which is not one of the 4 main cloud operating models. They are federated. Is not one of the main cloud operating models. Has that affected anybody? Oof. Chris R is in second place now.
Yeah.
What are we on now? Question number 6. Which tool is used to assess the current IT estate before migrating? Is it Azure Scan, Azure Migration, Azure Migrate, or Azure Migraine? Yes.
I'm surprised no one chose Azure Migraine.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely Migraine. Yeah, absolutely. When was Cloud Adoption Framework generally available?
Might be a Fallout question as well.
Well, I was.
Okay.
2019, and that comes from the horse's mouth, apparently, Ahmed, you were saying.
Yeah, internal information.
Okay, Chris R's gone up into first place. Here we go, true or false? Is VS Code open source? Everybody answered quite quickly there. And the answer is yes, it is. Any change at the top? No. No change in the top. Okay. Next question. What is not part of the 5 R's in the Cloud Adoption Framework? Refactor, replace, resize, or rehost? People got that right. Chris R is on fire. How many monthly active users of VS Code are there? Greater than 5 million. Yeah. Still no. Carl IT Nerd is closing in on Chris R. Which of the following services is used for migrating on-prem SQL Server databases to Azure SQL databases? Yes.
Good job.
DMA. What are we on now? No change at the top. Oof, Chris R is streaking ahead. Has he done enough? How can we prevent hyperjacking of the VM image? X. Yeah. He's insider info. There we go. 18 people got that right. Oh. TC. Last question, true or false? Are frequent and quick rollout of code and configuration changes a security benefit DevOps? Sixteen of you got that right. Has that made any difference to the leaderboard? So in first place, third place, we've got Carl IT Nerd. Well done, Carl. Second place, we have TC. And in first place, we have Chris R. Well done, Mr. Reddington.
Very good.
But as a Microsoft employee, you can skip over me. So go for
sure,
the next
Chris?
two. I am absolutely sure.
So TC, there we go. Say thank you to Chris.
Next one, please. Also Microsoft employee.
No way. Toby, are you willing to pass it down?
Pass it down, please.
Oh,
Who was the third one? I missed that.
Oh, Carl, I think you've got several things to be thankful for these Microsoft employees for now. Carl, I know you are. Don't go anywhere. I'll get your email sorted. We'll get that sorted for you. So, no, thanks, guys, and thanks for that, and thanks, Ahmed, for putting that together. That's fantastic. Right, I'm going to quickly just share my screen, just to obviously, like I say, if you're able to fill in the feedback form just as soon as I can get the link on the screen. Bear with. There we go. So yeah, if you can, so firstly, I mean, just to say, you know, just to wrap this up, thanks so much to all our speakers tonight, to Shabaz, to Neil, Darren, Rolf, Chris, Martyn, and Mert. Huge thanks for coming along tonight and giving us our first lightning talk session. Like I say, if anybody's got any feedback, I'll give you the link now. But just to repeat, our next session is on. What's going on with my my PowerPoint? A minute, there we go. That's why I press the right button. So our next session, save the date, 15th of April. Sign up for that. We've got some fantastic speakers on the go. And there we go. That's the end of our session. Huge thanks for everybody to joining tonight. If you can scan the QR code or go to that URL, leave us some feedback. That would be awesome. On that note, that's the end of our show. Thanks for everybody for joining, and we'll catch you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.